You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Allan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Over the past few weeks, I've been writing articles for B&H Explorer about lenses. Now, there's nothing new there, but the lenses I've been writing about lately are lenses I've purchased over the years based on their optical attributes. I'm also including one or two lenses I've used extensively, but not as of yet do I own them. Someday, perhaps. We thought today we would talk a little bit about these lenses, but not as a lens collector, but as a lens user. We're going to do a kind of top 10, but not necessarily in order because I like each of these lenses for what they are and what they do when I mount them onto my camera. And for the sake of organizing this discussion, let's start with one of the first lenses that ever caught my attention, not necessarily for reasons of sharpness, but because of the way the lens sees things. And that would be a Zeiss Hologon. It's a T-Star 16mm f8, which is a really fascinating little lens. It's jewel-like. Now, the original Hologon was a 15mm f8 that was designed in the late 1940s by Zeiss, and it was distortionless. It has about 107 degree angle of view. But because of its design, when you're level to your subject, it's zero distortion. The problem they had with the lens was that it was so wide that at the time there was no camera available that they could mount it to. So Zeiss actually designed a Contour X camera, special edition, that was essentially a 35mm camera that wrapped around the lens with a built-in 15mm viewfinder. Now, they only made about 1,000 of those. They weren't in huge distribution. And then in the 1990s, Contax came out with the G1 followed by the G2. These were really beautiful. I call them electronic Leicas. They were beautiful rangefinder cameras, film with Zeiss lenses. And one of the lenses they came out for, which cost about $2,600 back in the day, was a 16mm f8 version of this lens. Now, it's f8. It's a fixed aperture, and it's not a bladed aperture. It's actually a Waterhouse aperture, which is a perfectly round hole, which means you don't get sun stars from it. But one of the things about this lens is that because of its design, and it's only 5 elements, it's tiny. It looks like a lens cap or a body cap when it's on the camera.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm looking at it here, and it's tiny. It is like a lens cap with protection around it. Yeah, nice metal.
It's like bumper guards.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, also, those bumper guards are actually functional because the lens, you get 2 stops of light loss towards the edges. This thing vignettes like nuts. Now, I happen to like the look at it of the vignetting, and a lot of photographers just go away without the filter. But if you put the filter on, it's a center-weighted filter, and it's dense in the center and clear in the edges. So it basically eliminates the 2-stop loss, but it also turns your f8 lens into effectively f16. So you got to work with that. But the way it renders, the amount of focus it has, what is in focus is incredibly sharp with an amazing amount of like a micro contrast that almost gives the picture a 3D feel. And the lens is startling to look at when you see the pictures that it takes, as sharp as it is, the contrast levels, and the way it gets dreamy towards the edges, whatever is not in focus, has a softness about it that is unlike any other lens that I've ever used. So it's kind of unique. It's got its limitations. It focuses down to 12 inches. And again, mine has been adapted to a Leica M mount, because the original was a G, which doesn't fit too many things. Okay. But with a Leica M mount, I could use it on Leicas, Sony, and any mirrorless camera with a lot of interesting applications. If you do adapt, by the way, a little warning here, John. Mm-hmm. If you do adapt this for use on a Sony camera, use it with electronic shutter. All right. For some reason, if you use it conventionally, the shutter jams and you got to take the battery out and start it all over again. But I found that electronically, it works with there's barely enough clearance because the lens goes all the way back in. Yes, John.
Well, I was going to ask, it's a G mount only. Is that what you said? So it
was made for the G mounts. Yeah. Okay. Now there are a few adapters out there, but not very much. It's not one of the more popular mounts that you'll ever find adapters for. But there are a few companies that make M adapters that you could basically do yourself. I got mine for about $200. I found an overseas felt, China, obviously. And in about a half hour, I was able to remove the G mount on the back of the lens and replace it with an M mount. And now I could use it on just about any camera that accepts a Leica M mount.
It's not a very fast lens. I imagine it's kind of hard to run around and, unless it's real bright, just shooting it handheld, no?
Yeah, that's a good point, because when this lens was made, that was very, very true, because it was made back when it was all film cameras. Digital was first coming out in 1995, 96, and they were slugs, and there was nothing made for this. Now, today we have a few things going for us. We have cameras that will give you, 5 or more stops of image stabilization. You can now put your camera onto ridiculously high ISOs. I routinely shoot with this lens at, ISO 1600, 2000 on my Sony or other cameras like that, or just leave it in auto. And then I just set it for image stabilization. And the truth of the matter is, you can handhold these slow lenses and get sharp pictures now. So it's doable. It's hard to do, especially, and also keep in mind, these are manual focus lenses. And I really rely on focus peaking to be able to see exactly what is in focus, because it's very easy, even at f8, to miss. So it's a challenging lens to use. It's totally manual. It's not coupled. And by the way, that's one of the things I love about it, even on an old film camera, is that this lens, not only when it works, does it give me pictures that I really, truly like looking at. And other people seem to like them too, but I like using it because it's like driving an old English sports car with stick shift. I mean, you are really driving this thing. You are creating everything that goes on there, and to me, that's part of the photographic process.
It's similar to like when I borrowed the M10P with the rangefinder.
Yeah,
when you actually get the shot, it's kind of gratifying because it's so hard to actually get a shot.
You earned it. That's right.
Earned it, exactly. Yeah,
that's it. So you had to give the camera back, huh?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Oh God.
So let's jump up to this Hasselblad SWC.
Yeah, now this
Zeiss T-Star 38mm f4.5 Distagon. Now this I know.
No, I correct that. Okay, it's a Biogon. Okay,
it's a Biogon.
It's a Biogon lens. Okay, I had to double check that. I looked at that and go, nope, that's not right.
Gotcha.
Now.
And now this is a leaf shutter. So go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Now the Hasselblad Super Wide, the SWC, was made from the 1954 to about 2007. There were about 5 or 6 versions of it. I own a 1979 version of it, one of the earlier designs. Now, what's interesting about this camera is that, unlike other Hasselblads, the body is only about an inch thick. There's no mirror in it. It is now, again, we were talking about earlier about the Zeiss Hologon lens, that when they designed it, there was no camera made for it. The 38mm Biogon is the same thing. They designed this thing in the late 1940s, and Zeiss was really proud of it, but they had no camera that would work. So Victor Hasselblad saw it and he goes, I could make a camera for that. And he built a camera that came out in 1954 that was specifically so that this lens can be used. Now, like the Hologon, the 38 Biogon, when used on a super wide, is distortionless. You could actually use it as a copy camera. You could photograph blueprints and then print them out and build a house to it accurately. It is incredibly sharp, edge to edge. And because it's a leaf shutter, rather than having a mirror going up and down, like a view camera lens, it has the shutter built into the lens. Less vibration, less noise. It enables them to eliminate the mirror assembly. You could synchronize at all shutter speeds with flash. And because it's so quiet and so small, I always call this camera, the Hasselblad, a Leica M6 with a 21mm medium format version. Because if you were to take a 21mm lens, it has a 90-degree diagonal angle of view. Same thing with the 38mm Biogon on the super wide. Even though it's a square format, medium format, you have the same 90-degree angle of view, but within a square. And I've shot with both cameras on times. There were a few times I've gone out just with these two cameras and lenses and just compare the kind of shots I got. And the image quality from the two of them is just real super.
And what do you shoot with it? Because I know this is something for architectures, is often something that's listed to be used for this kind of lens. Is that what you're using?
This was a standard for architecture. The Hologon's a little tricky because it gets darker on the edges, but I've seen some magnificent photographs architecturally done with it. I have used them a lot for both. Also for landscape. And I also, another thing that's interesting about both of these lenses, especially the super wide, the 38mm Biogon, is that it's one of the few truly wide angle lenses that when you look at the pictures, they don't look wide angle because they're so well corrected. They're more wide field than wide angle. You don't get the impression you're looking at what's the equivalent of a 21 millimeter lens when you view through these things. They just don't come off wide angle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of an interesting thing about it. And I don't know of any of the lenses that do that.
Right. Wow. All right, let's jump ahead then if we want to.
Now, and by the way, these cameras and lenses do come and go. They're not available anymore new, but the B&H used department, I bought my Hologon there and I bought my super wide there. And I buy I would say 90% of the gear that I buy lens-wise, I do buy used. I buy a lot of it at B&H because I know that they do check it and the prices are fair. And I buy there even though they don't really give me much of a discount because they price them so fairly to begin with. But these items, a lot of these items we're going to be talking about are available online, eBay if you wish to, but definitely the B&H used department has a constantly rotating series of lenses, cameras, and all this stuff. Anyway, let's move on.
The next one is available new, and it's a kind of a legendary lens. It's a Nikon Nikkor 50 millimeter f1.2 AIS, and I know you wrote about that recently too. So.
Yeah, and a little nod to Todd Vorenkamp, a former B&H colleague who's gone on to a fine life up in the Northeast. He's also a frequent guest on our show. Todd first turned me on to this lens when a couple of refurbs, factory refurbs, showed up in the used department, and I had heard about them. And I'd known about them, but he said, no, you got to see this. And they also priced them really well. So we went over and within a half hour, 2 of them out of 3 were gone and in our possession. I've been thanking him ever since. I'm not a big fan of 50 millimeter just because of the fact that I often don't see in 50 millimeter. But the image quality from this lens is just truly magical. At f1.2, the widest aperture, which is about a third of a stop, faster than f1.4, but remarkably different visually. And the way this lens renders it, it's kind of sharp, but it's got this glow about it that is just magical. And the flare control is really, really nice. But what makes this lens especially attractive is that if you stop it down to f2, okay, it is incredibly sharp. Wherever it is sharp, because again, you still have narrow depth of field, so you have selective focus, but whatever is in focus is insanely sharp. And from what a lot of reports have said is that at f2, the 50 millimeter Nikkor 1.2 AIS is as sharp or sharper than any other 50 millimeter lens out there at f2 and at any other f-stop. So from f2 down, all you're doing is gaining depth of field. Your sharpness levels maintain that real high level. And the contrast is beautiful. It's really, really, really a beautiful lens. They're affordable. New, they're, I don't know, somewhere between $600-700, but they show up used a lot because the lens has been made for 30 years. They're still making it. And we get factory refurbs at the B&H used department every once in a while. If you're into 50 millimeter and you want to buy a beautifully well-made lens. Again, this is when Nikkor lenses were made out of, metal alloy. These you pick this lens up, it's heavy, it's nice.
Right. Yeah, it feels great. Lens. And also just the manual focusing operation on it just feels incredible when you use it.
Yes, silky smooth. It's the classic Nikkors are just gorgeous. They were the standard of manual focus lenses for a long time.
I'd recommend anyone to take a look at the B&H website for this lens and the reviews that have come in. Most of them are very, very positive, of course, but it's a nice little read to see what people have to say about this lens, and it's a beauty. I had actually had a lens like this, and I hate to say that it was stolen once, but life goes on. So let's jump ahead then to which is kind of a variation on this. Anyway,
a variation of
7 Artisans 50 millimeter f1.1.
Yeah, now this came out like within the past year. And it's kind of like, I hate to say it, call it a poor man's 50 millimeter 1.2 Nikkor because it's very comparable to it. And the lens is really, really nice, wide open, has a very dreamy quality to it. And when you stop it down, it's sharp, but not the same way the Nikkor is. It's very, very sharp. It still maintains this sort of a glow-like quality to everything that has a halation about it. And it's really nice. I owned one for a while because when it came out, they're priced very, very fairly. They're only a few $100s.
Yeah, no, they're going at
but I honestly,
$350 basically.
yeah. But I already had the Nikkor 51 too, and I said, no, this is silly. And I knew somebody who needed one, and I sold it to them. They had a good deal, and everybody was happy. But if I didn't have my Nikkor 51 too, I would have kept that lens and be using it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it worked again. I could put it on pretty much any. It was an M mount, so use it on Leica, use it on Sony with adapter, or any camera I want to with an adapter.
So, is this only available at M mount, as far as you know?
Yeah, it's an M mount only. It's available in chrome and black, and again, it's under $400. And again, it's a good lens. It's hefty. Give you a warning right now. This thing is a heavy lens. F1.1 weighs. There's no way you get away lightweight at that kind of speed. But it is a unique lens, and people will look at those pictures and go, ooh, even if they don't know why they're going ooh, because it renders beautifully. It's got a special quality to it. It's got its own visual signature, which is nice.
Well, speaking of unique lenses, oddball lenses, the next one is a Nikon 500mm f5 reflex Nikkor mirror lens, which, mirror lenses have been getting a lot of talk about lately. Some new ones have been produced by Canon, and I've been dying to get my hands on one just to do a little review and have some fun with these very affordable telephoto lenses. So what about this Nikon?
Yeah, you mentioned new. There's a new, I believe it's a Tokina 400mm that's coming out that we've been talking about that I think
and Canon have put them out for their R series.
The 600 and 800mm, the collapsible ones, I've used both of them and shot, and they are amazing. And in fact, they handle, even though they're 600 and 800mm, they handle better than the Nikon 500mm f5 reflex Nikkor, which is the next lens on our list.
Well,
and that was the first thing that struck me when I handled these Canons. Again, the new ones that just came out, the R series lenses, is that I owned this Nikon 500mm f5 for many years. One of them. I wrote an Explorer article recently about mirror lenses that included photographs that I took with this particular lens over time. And the 500 f5 mirror Nikkor, it holds a special place in my photographic heart because this was the lens used often by one of my early photographic heroes and a mentor of mine, Art Kane. And the pictures he took in Paris with this lens, they stopped me in my tracks this very day. And I still have the April 1970 issue of a Swiss magazine called Camera, in which I first saw them when I was, a high school kid taking pictures. And the pictures just made me stop and go, what's different about this? And then I started researching. I found out about the lens, and I found one at some camera store in Midtown Manhattan back in the day. It might have been Willoughby's. I found the used one and bought it, and I used it extensively. It was like you could roast a chicken in this thing. That's how big it was. But it only weighed about 2 pounds, so it was easy to haul around. And when it worked, it was amazing. The focus was onion skin thick. F5 at 500mm is like zero depth of field. But when that lens worked, it was just spectacular. It was really, really nice. And it made me also appreciate how beautifully the new 600 and 800mm Canon R series lenses are, because this was a bear to handle. The new ones are not, and they're even longer, and slower, which is amazing.
Right. So this was kind of a long lens, because often, the mirror lenses are pretty short. They tend to look like soup cans,
Yeah. Well, if you're familiar with the 500 f8 Nikkor, which is pretty much the same size of most of that vintage, say they make them much smaller. This one was about a third larger. I would say it was, if the f8 is about 8 inches long, this would be a good 12. And it was wider, a little bit wider around. So it was it was a hefty lens. It was about the same size of the 1000mm f11 that they make, if anyone's ever seen that.
Wow.
Yeah, which I've never handled and I have no desire to handle.
So who would you recommend these for? I mean, obviously they're affordable compared to a prime f4 or some of the other lenses that are used for birding and sports photography, and these might not get you there because of the speed they're not offering. But who would you recommend these for?
Oh man, that's a good question, because if the sun's not bright, they have limited use. Now that said, I can claim that I shot a magazine cover of it was a 70 or 80 foot cabin cruiser crossing the Connecticut River at sunset. And I was hand holding a 500 F5, okay, from a floating dock. Okay. And I nailed
admit it.
Out of one roll of Kodachrome 64 and a prayer. I just held the button. I kept adjusting my focus as this thing came into the frame lines. And I got 3 frames that I sent off, and one became a cover of Boating Magazine.
All right.
And I don't recommend doing that,
right.
especially if somebody's depending on you to bring home a picture for a cover.
Right. Yeah, but no, they're a lot of fun. I mean, and they are something to.
But can I add? It was 1/15 of a second the exposure. Let me add that to it. Okay, 1/15 of a second at f5. So
everything just
again, it's doable. But the truth of the matter is that this lens invariably I would have mounted on a tripod or some kind of support.
Right.
Okay, we're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some Voigtlander lenses that are rather interesting. And I have a few tips on buying used lenses that are high quality at far less cost than their new equivalents. Stay tuned.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. The best way to support the show is by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For links to gear and more information on today's guests, check out the show notes in your podcast app or visit our homepage on the B&H Explorer website and join the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group. And now, back to the show.
Okay, we are back.
Yes, we are. And we're going to continue with Allan's list of top 10 lenses from his personal collection.
And lenses I've used.
And of course, definitely. Yeah, this is something I really want to point out, which is that these are not just sitting up on a shelf or in a case. I mean, Allan uses them all the time. And if you check out Explora, there's a lot of articles he's written about them when he uses these lenses. So you can really see, the things he's talking about here on this show, some of the effects and the characteristics that these lenses show. And the next one we're going to talk about is Voigtlander. Matter of fact, there's a few Voigtlanders on the list.
Yeah, a little trio here. And by the way, I'm not on the take from Voigtlander. I don't make money from these, and I bought all these lenses.
All right.
But it is true that Allan is known as John Voigtlander for this very reason.
That's true.
Yes, the camera cowboy. Yes.
Right. And this one is the Voigtlander VM 40mm f2.8 Heliar lens for a Sony E-mount. And again, we don't need to mention that Sony E-mount cameras and other mirrorless have kind of brought back a lot of these older lenses into the limelight, and they're getting used a lot.
Oh, yeah. And so many lenses are being made just in that mount, too, which is kind of interesting.
Right.
But this one's even goofier because it's an E-mount. But one of the funny things about this lens is that there's no focusing mechanism on it. And to use it, you have to use a Voigtlander VME Leica M to Sony E adapter, which was originally intended for use to adapt Leica M lenses to Sony cameras. And there's a built-in 4mm focusing helicoid in this adapter, which means that you can now focus closer. It's like a built-in extension tube, a variable extension tube. So this lens, to focus it, you have to have this adapter. But when you get everything in there, first of all, it's tiny. The lens is a collapsible lens. If you ever saw the old Leicas with the collapsible lenses on them that they just fold right in on them, this is the same thing. And to use it, you have to pull it out, give it a half turn, lock it into place. And then you use the lens mount, the adapter, the VME adapter, to focus it. And it only focuses it down to about 3 feet or so. But the image quality of this lens and the lens that we're going to talk about after this is really, really sweet. It's very unique. It's different. And I hate using these words because we're talking about such subtleties of visual optical phenomena, and we're using words to describe them. Mm-hmm. The lenses are sharp, but they're also really nice for portraiture because, like older Hasselblad lenses, they're kind to skin and they treat it well. It's just not razor sharp. It's just razor sharp. And then what goes out of focus, the bokeh is absolutely lovely. And again, it's small. It's not light though, because the lens there's a lot of brass in this thing, and that adapter's got a lot of steel and brass. So it's very heavy, very, very dense, built beautifully, gorgeous image quality to go along with it. And
well, when you say heavy, though, just remind folks that this is a small lens. I mean, it's dense,
it's
like
small.
you said. It's a beautiful lens. I mean,
yeah. It also kind of a jewel-like thing, and again, it's got a chrome alloy finish on it, but there's a lot of brass. But when you fold this thing down, it looks like a body cap on the camera, and it's really great. But again, only for Sony E cameras, but it's worth investigating. And if you do have that, and you do have the VME adapter, you could also now adapt a lot of M-mount lenses, including 7 Artisan lenses to your camera with close focusing, closer than the lenses were intended to do, which is something I love doing.
Yeah,
now,
just to follow up on
go ahead.
When it's collapsed, it's only a half an inch long. It's tiny, as you mentioned.
Yeah, tiny. So again, it's great carry around. Again, it's 40 millimeter, which I should add is true normal. 38 to 40 millimeter or 42 millimeter, that's considered true normal as far as perspective rendition and replication of the way we see things spatially. And again, folds up real small, f2.8, it's fast enough, and focuses down to 3 feet, stop her down a little bit, and you can come even a little bit closer. But again, a good travel lens. Now, the next one is also a Voigtlander, and it's a 50 millimeter. It's a Heliar f3.5. And this one juts out from the camera as much as the VM 40 millimeter folds into the camera. It's a funny thing. It looks like a 50s vintage Soviet spacecraft, and it's got little engravings of the optical formula on the side of the barrel. It's chrome. It's kind of cone shaped, so it's wide at the base and then narrows down towards the tip, and the front element is very, very, very small. And it comes with a little shade on it. It looks really unique. It's very retro looking, and it renders very much the way the 40 millimeter Voigtlander VM lens renders. It's beautiful. A limitation of both of these lenses is minimum focus, but to get around that, I would carry around a pair of extension tubes, Sony to Sony, which I had anyway. And now popping one of those tubes in, be it a 10 millimeter or 16 millimeter or both, I can now focus in very close. And with each of these lenses, I've gotten amazing close-ups. The depth field is very, very thin, even when you stop down with depending on how much extension you put onto this. And the rendering is lovely. The bokeh is like cream. And the tonality and contrast levels are just extremely sweet. I've used both of these lenses close up for a lot of flower photography, and the results are just really lovely. And again, they're not macro lenses either.
Also, just to mention real quickly, it is the manual aperture is declicked, so you can do you can do smooth, seamless aperture adjustments as you go along.
And invariably knock the aperture to the wrong number,
right.
not knowingly. So you got to
disadvantages to that too.
Lens. It's But again, I got some gorgeous pictures. I no longer have that lens with a 40, but they were always on my radar.
Right. And just to clarify, it really is just 2 inches long. It's a small lens.
Yeah. But it doesn't fold up. So, but it's kind of it's skinny and long and tube and cone shape. So people look at it. It's kind of it's a great looking lens. It's a conversation starter.
Totally, you get a lot of.
I mean, you look at this and you go, "Huh? What is that?" I mean, it's about the best icebreaker you'll ever have if you're with camera people. It really is.
All right. So continuing with John Voigtlander and the Voigtlander Noctin 75 millimeter f1.5.
Yeah, this is a relatively new lens. And I pounced on it because a used one or an open box showed up at the used department, and they really took a nice discount on it. So I took advantage of it, and I'm not sorry. I got a chrome one. It's built like a Leica M lens. It's hefty. It's got great controls. The focusing is lovely on it. Well, again, these are all manual focus. The apertures are separate, so it's easy you don't get the aperture ring and focus confused. It's got a nice weight and balance to it. I think a 58 millimeter front filter size on it. It's really nice, wide open. It reminds me a lot of the 50 1.2 Nikkor. It has a similar kind of quality to it. And the minimum focus is equivalent because it's a little bit further away than a 50, but as far as the image ratio size, subject's magnification, it's about the same. But when you stop this lens down to about 5, 6 or so, or even 4, and then start playing down from there, you have a lot of really nice control. And what's sweet about the lens is that the space between each aperture is wide. So you could do some very, very subtle adjustments to your depth of field before it falls into a click or anything like that. So there's a lot of play. And that's something I didn't realize until I used the lens a few times. I realized I could really fine tune my depth of field with this. And the fact that it's a 75 gives you a little more separation. So I've used it for a lot of interesting photographs, mostly in black and white, but I've shot color too. And it's really superb on both. Color rendition's lovely. I'd say the color rendition on all the Voigtlanders, by the way, that I mentioned, is real sweet.
Yeah, that's something I've heard mentioned before about the color with these. And also,
these
as you mentioned,
priced real well, by the way. And if you're into any kind of retro kind of lenses, a lot of people look at Voigtlanders like Zeiss ZM series lenses as alternatives to Leica glass. And they all have their own qualities and uniqueness. But Voigtlander is, I think, a significant company. It's also, I think, important to mention that Voigtlander lenses are made by Cosina. And Cosina is also the company that produces Zeiss lenses. I think over 90% of the Zeiss lenses on the market are made by Cosina. Very few of them are made in Germany by Zeiss themselves, some of the more specialty. So you have Voigtlander and Zeiss under the same roof. And I would say that the quality levels of both of these lenses are really remarkable. But the price point, in particular, the Voigtlander, makes them especially attractive.
So jumping back, you mentioned Zeiss just a second ago, Allan. So the ninth one on your list.
I mentioned this one briefly. Okay. Now, the next lens on the list, number 9 here, is a Zeiss Biogon 25mm f2.8 ZM. Now, this is another Leica type lens. It's an M mount. It's made by Zeiss, and it was made specifically for Leica cameras. A lot more affordable, and the image quality is phenomenal on these. What I like about 25mm in particular is that 25 to 24mm has always been my favorite focal length. And what's nice about this particular lens is that when I put it on a Leica, the widest, if you use a Leica focusing system, the widest frame lines they give you are 28mm. Now, there's space around that. And there's enough space around those frame lines to give you the frame lines really fairly accurately of 25mm. So I could put that onto my any Leica M camera and focus it through the rangefinder. And again, I got to squeeze my eye a little bit closer to see all 4 corners, but I can use it with coupled focusing. So I always liked that about it. Now I'm going to take a step back now and tack in that last Voigtlander lens, that 75mm 1.5. When I go out with 2 lenses these days, be it with a Leica or with my Sony A7R III, I take 2 lenses with me. I take my 75 1.5 and I take the Biogon 25, the Zeiss, the ZM. They're both compact manual focus lenses that will go onto either of my cameras or any other mirrorless camera as long as I have an adapter for it. Now, problem with these lenses and with any rangefinder lenses is that you have problems focusing close. Now, most of my pictures, I love getting right up to my subject, and you can't do it with these lenses. And then I discovered a little item called a Leica Aufro, O-U-F-R-O, all uppercase. And this is a 10mm extension tube that Leica made for about 25 years and discontinued some years ago, but you could buy them used. And it becomes an extension tube. And now when I pop one of these in, or 2, because I own 2 of them now, I can now use the 25 and 75mm lenses on my Leica monochrome or my Sony A7 camera with close-ups, which is something these lenses were not meant to do. And they do it well. Now, wide open, they're not sharp. They are ethereal. They are fascinating to look through. When you stop them down to about f8 of f11, you start gaining sharpness. You start getting things coming into sharper focus, but you also get some phenomenal optical aberrations, swirls, and things that go on that are just really amazing that, again, the lens was not meant to do this. But the bottom line of photography is taking pictures that are interesting to look at. And I find that between these two lenses, I have a moderate telephoto and a moderate wide angle, or it's a fairly wide angle, my two favorite focal lengths. And now I can get in closer and take the kind of pictures I like taking when I see something that needs closer than 2 or 3 feet. And this has become my little travel kit. And either one works beautifully, my either the Sony or the Leica, and I could shoot with either one of those, the kind of pictures I like taking in a tiny little travel bag.
And I just want to kind of reemphasize what Alan's talking about here, which is that he is shooting with Leica and Sony E-mount. And, these are, I don't want to call them specialty lenses to some degree, but, this is not, we're not talking about your 24 to 70 f2.8 Canon Nikon Sigma that a lot of us, including myself, use all the time. So remember, folks out there, that these are mostly all manual focusing lenses, and it's something you need to utilize in the proper setting. You got to take your time and enjoy.
Yeah, if you're a sports photographer, okay, I don't recommend any of these. I really don't. Maybe the 500. Okay, you can. I don't necessarily remember it. Again, these are lenses that I've been shooting for over 50 years now, and my photography's evolved constantly, and God willing, it'll always will, and we should all be evolving as photographers. And after using a lot of different kind of cameras and lens combinations, and I've been really fortunate to be able to play with some pretty remarkable toys over the years, I've learned to look for certain attributes in the cameras and lenses that when I get them, I tend to stick with them. And I don't mind getting them because I know I'm going to be using these for a while. Most of the lenses I have are old lenses. Only a few of them are relatively new or still being made. And again, I buy my lenses now for personality and how they appear. I own 4 macros. Why? Because they each take different kind of macro pictures. Again, it's just where I've gotten to right now. So I'm talking from not necessarily what's the fastest, sharpest lens out there, but I'm talking from point of view of lenses that render images that just speak differently or speak the way I want to be heard visually. One of the things I want to emphasize is that a lot of this stuff, most of these lenses we're talking about today are not expensive.
Right.
We're talking about a lot of very affordable things. And this is going to be my last thought on it. And that is in the past few months, since I started using a Leica monochrome, which enables live view, which means I can now adapt lenses other than Leica lenses or M-mount with, 3-foot focusing. I could put anything I want on this thing now if I have the right adapter, and I've got an electronic finder on it, so I could do crazy focusing things. So I started looking around, and I've always been an admirer of Zeiss lenses. I've shot with a lot of them, and they're not inexpensive. They're very pricey lenses. Now, what's interesting is that a lot of the lenses that are out there these days are updates of existing older lenses. Now, a good example would be a lot of the bodice lenses that are out there right now are essentially lens formulas that have been out for about 20, 25 years. The ZF series, the manual focus lenses that they made for Nikon F-mount, they also made for Canon. These are hefty, beautifully made, fast prime lenses. They have a 25 millimeter f2 Distagon that is still made. I believe they're starting to phase these lenses out, but you could still buy them new, and there's a lot of them used. Now, the 50 millimeter f2, which one is this? The ZF2, which is a beautiful, beautiful lens, manual focus, is about a third of the price of a new 25 millimeter f2 bodice, which is autofocus, but it's the same optical formula. The lenses are equal in quality, but it's a third less. Right. Another good example of that, I picked up a 60 millimeter Zeiss macro planar, a 60 millimeter f2.8, along with a 100 millimeter f2.8 macro planar made for the Contax reflex cameras that were discontinued back in the 90s. And I got all 3 of these lenses, okay, for a little bit less than the price of one new Zeiss bodice lens. And I got a 25 millimeter f2, which, by the way, focuses down to a few inches. And then I have a 60 and 100 millimeter macro lenses that go down to life size. And I could adapt these lenses to anything I'm going to shoot with the right adapter.
Well, there you go. One thing that I know you mentioned it earlier, but just to point out that, again, the bodice are autofocus lenses.
They are autofocus. They're lighter because they're using composite. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
There might have been some adjustments to or updates to the coatings. I will not say they're identical. It is the same optical formula. And by the way, these optical formulas, it's not unusual for manufacturers to carry one to the next. Now, with mirrorless, they've made some major updates and improvements. But for a lot of the traditional SLR lenses, which are perfectly fine to use and as we all know, quite usable, it's possible to buy older generation lenses, and I use Zeiss as an example because they did make separate lines just independently for Nikon F and for Canon, and then they made them for Contax a generation earlier. These are all very, very good lenses. They're manual focus, and they're heavy, no two ways about it. But the pictures they take are quite unique, and each of these lenses I love because of the fact that they do what I want to do, and they do it well.
There you go.
Well, that's all I have to say. I'm tired of talking, and my guess is you're tired of listening to me as well.
Never.
Anyway, Jason, what do you have? Do you have any favorite lenses you want to throw into the mix here? Love to hear what you got to say.
My favorite third-party lens is my Rokinon 14mm 2.8.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely sharp lens for landscapes at night. That I just love the lens. It has a real warm quality to it. It's manual focus. For a fast lens, 14mm 2.8, that sharp at that price point, I think it's like under $300. I think.
Oh, you've got your money's worth because I see your pictures. I mean, you do some amazing stuff with that. That you've got your money's worth out of that lens for sure.
Well, thank you. Oh, absolutely. I would recommend the lens to anybody. It's not built quite as sturdily as the Sony lenses or the Nikon lenses. Comparable speed and focal length, but it's good. It's good enough. Take care of it. It's got a plastic body. But it's still a great lens.
Yeah, just don't beat it up. Treat it with respect, and you get years of use out of it. Absolutely.
You're definitely talking to the wrong guy if you want to ask me then.
Oh, shit.
It may not be a great lens for John.
Treating lenses with respect. Treating lenses with respect is not what I'm known for. And I was actually going to mention that my current favorite, which is pretty boring, is the 70 to 200 2.8 Nikon, which I use day in, day out for work, and I realized very recently, having taken it to Florida and used it for some bird photography, it is just now it cracks when I turn the focus lens, when I turn the focus ring, or the zoom rings. There's so much sand, the salt water mixed in there. I really got to get that thing cleaned out. But for the longest time, I was pretty much a 28, 35 millimeter type of shooter, street photographer. But over the past year or so, based on some of the jobs I've been doing, I've been incorporating the 70 to 200 a lot and just really like it. I mean, it's just so sharp and so fast, and it just gets what you needed done. So I'm going to have to put that as my favorite right now.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing fancy, but that's what it is.
There you have it. So
that's a really nice lens too.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, these are the workhorse lenses. Yeah, for sure. All right, Allan. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate that. We appreciate that. That's a pretty interesting list, and it's something that I'm going to just mention to our listeners to take a look at Explora, the website, our blog site, to see some of the lenses Allan is writing about, and some of the images that he's created with these lenses. It's really interesting, and that was the genesis for this episode. So have a look there too.
John Voigtlander returns.
I'm not going to live this one down at all.
By the
way, I think it's important to mention that we spoke to about 10 or so different kind of lenses here and things, and that again, all of these items, about half of them are still available new, which means that you could also find many of them used, and the ones that are not available new anymore are often available in the B&H used department, which gets a huge turnover of equipment. I know the stuff that they take in is checked. It's good. I don't think I've ever had a problem with anything I bought as far as a used lens or even a camera for that matter. And I won't say that's going to be the absolute rule all over, but I personally just when I buy something mail order, they don't even know it's me. It's fine. It works. And if there's, again, problems, it's a company you can go back to. They'll take care of you. That's for sure.
Which company is that again, Allan? Hadn't heard of them. Anyway.
If you are not yet a subscriber, head on over to wherever you subscribe to podcasts and type B&H Photography Podcast into the search field, and boom, you are family. You can also find us on the B&H Explorer website and on the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook page. For now and the immediate future, on behalf of John Harris and Jason Tables, my name is Allan Weitz, and thank you so much for tuning in today.